Ladies and gentlemen, what a season it was. And the magic finally ended in Tucson, Arizona last night with the Vegas Nighthawks, led by Jay Delora, defeating IFL MVP Max Mailer and the Green Bay Blizzards 64-61 in one of the most entertaining, most thrilling games of one of the best games of the IFL's existence, to be quite honest with you. And there was a lot that happened leading up to it, but we're going to talk about all that. We're going to wrap things up here and get this season closed and in a nice little bow. There's been some teams, there's been some movement, there's been some things happening. Over the past 3 weeks or so, since last had a little discussion about this great sport. And well, let's start, again with the IFL first. Again, we had 8 teams make it in. 2 were left standing last night, and only 1 came out as champion. Let's talk about the teams that got eliminated. Jacksonville, kind of obvious. They would lose, It wasn't crazy, or anything like that, but you knew Quad City was going to take care of business. Tulsa, I'm actually shocked at what happened to Tulsa. Sam Castronova dipped off to the UFL, so and a lot of guys actually have been dipping off to the UFL. So a lot of guys you'll be seeing, this past season, not just in the IFL but in other, indoor arena leagues as well. They're hopping on to the UFL, which is great. It's really good for them. So, yeah, and then Quad City itself, a barn burner with Green Bay in the Eastern Conference Championship, but ultimately Green Bay got the win. And out West, oh boy, I don't know where to begin, because the first round, Bay Area got shocked. I thought Bay Area was going to go all the way. I mean, it was more of a crapshoot this year, but I was like, you know what? Let me take Bay Area. Let me see if they go all the way. But no, that did not happen. That did not happen at all. Instead, Vegas won. And then, Arizona, San Diego, last play of the game. Was it offsides on the offense? Was it a false start? Who knows? Because Kevin Guy, made a big deal about it. Had and Arizona protested. IFL admitted they got it wrong, by the way. But, ultimately you can't change the outcome of the game once it is over, So San Diego had to move on to the next round, to the conference finals, the Western Conference Finals. Then they couldn't host. San Diego couldn't host. And it's not because, there was an event going on, like a concert or like monster trucks or whatever, something like that going on, similar to how Arizona's game, got moved to a Monday night, of course, because of monster trucks. But, ultimately it ended up being that San Diego could have played the game. But I believe the real reason was, and that's what a lot of people thought, so San Diego's actually kind of broke. They don't have the money to host the playoff game. So it got sent to Vegas instead. And, of course, Vegas won. And thus, that was that. And then, Todd Tryon, announced a couple things over this past weekend. First is that, hey, the Albuquerque team, the former Duke City team, Kyle Moore Brown, you are the new head coach of the New Mexico Chupacabras. And boy, oh boy, do they have some nice helmets. I'm talking the social media game already looking kind of strong. That's the way you want. That's what you want right there. And the team, has vibrant, nice colors, the red and the yellow. And I mean, it just looks good. Now, we're going to need one more, probably. depends on other factors because there are some rumors floating around. And we still don't know what's actually going to happen to Massachusetts. We really don't know right now. Lead is going to be Florida, somewhere in Florida. Don't know where yet, but we'll find out when Massachusetts decides to announce where they're going to go for 2026. So, yeah, that was one thing. The other thing was a reality TV show that, Todd announced. And it's like, okay. I don't care about reality TV shows about sports leagues like that, but you know what? I'm happy it exists. And there was an interview, my boy, off the wall. He had a great interview with Todd the other day. And, the IFL's looking, for something a little bit bigger, a little bit more of a national broadcast type deal, I think that would be very wise. We've had some interesting experiments in the past, CBS Sports Network broadcasting the last couple championships, Big 3 Plus, Stadium. We've had some interesting experiences over the past 5 or 6 years. We've had some interesting experiences, and has any of that caught on? Kind of, but also no. The IFL's in a good spot, as they always have been the past 4 or 5 years, where they have been continuing to build up momentum. But I hope things work in the way that they need to work because, it's put up or shut up time. You want to call yourselves the major league of indoor football, you got to put up or shut up. You can't half-ass it. You got to keep going. You got to keep shooting for the moon. So that's just my thoughts on the IFL as it stands. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even though the last play of the IFL National Championship came down to a goal line stand in which the ball could not be seen, Max Miller tried to get into the end zone and couldn't get in there somehow. Again, can't tell from, different angles. And thus Vegas won, So, What about the other league that played? The other league that had their championship over the past couple of weeks, TAL, the Arena League. Tim Brown also had an interview with Off the Wall, which I'm almost as jealous, but then again, at the same time, I have been kind of stepping back a little bit and letting other people do more, because otherwise I would have asked Tim Brown myself, like other people are doing more than what I've been doing over the past year, I still do my best, but, at the same time, have stepped back, definitely stepped back a little bit. And, other people have stepped up. But, yeah, Tim Brown was interviewed, by Off the Wall. And, he said, there may be some, maybe some things happening. Tony O'Neill, was also on Around the Indoor World with my boy Shady Sports. And, there could be a TAL rule change. I don't know what that rule change is, but he hinted at it. Tim Brown was like, hey, we got to keep, building up our momentum, as well. Do we start our season a little bit earlier so we don't, intrude on the NFL or anything like that? We're trying to get, more teams in. I think 10 is a bit too much for next year. Just to be quite honest with you, I think 8 is a bit more feasible for the TAL. And so, that's just my suggestion. But, nobody follows my suggestions. I think 8 is a bit more feasible, Mr. Brown. But, TAL's also in a healthy, shape. Nobody's folded. Nobody's moved. Every game has been played. There are some financial issues in there. Again, there were some that were major to start the TAL season. And there have been, some issues since then, some small issues that can be fixed, But ultimately, the TAL's in a good spot as well. They're in a good spot. Now, the other two big leagues, before we really go over some things, we gotta get some of the nonsense out the way. The Iowa Power played a couple preseason games. One of them was last Saturday night. And that was certainly a stream of all time. There was a chair up in the rafters, which can't really say what we call that chair on here, but if you know, you know. If you know, you know. Think Adam 22. If you know, you know. And then like half the arena didn't have seats on the other side. The stream was kind of wonky. There was no goalposts in that game. No goalposts at all. But there was an amazing catch last Saturday night. And they played another game against the Kansas City Bulldogs. They had the Iowa Nighthawks, the Kansas City Bulldogs, UIFA preseason action. And ultimately at the end of the day, Power won both games. So the Dallas Falcons going to Austin, whatever that means. Austin's kind of not a place to put there's another team that I want to talk about real quick, before, but Austin, guys, Austin, Texas. Austin's weird and all, but the stigma that Austin's weird. But at the same time, what are we thinking here? There's no way you're actually going to Austin itself. There's just no way. I don't think that's happening. But yeah, the other team in Texas that was about to be announced was announced was the Tyler Crew. Yeah. It's Tyler, Texas. Come on. Tyler, Texas, guys. Tyler, Texas. City and, that's, absolutely nothing to do down there. The Royal Palace, just was like, all right, we can't even do anything right now. We're trying to get sold, It ain't happening. So, I guess the Tyler Crew are going to have to play in a rodeo barn or something like that or something. I don't know. But yeah, the Royal Palace said, no, we're not hosting any events anytime soon, which is crazy. So, and another team's on the move from the NAL, the Idaho Horsemen, not playing in Nampa in 2026, which, not entirely surprised. Idaho's had money issues as well. They've struggled to keep up in the NAL. Yeah, it is what it is with that. The MAFL, is kind of back in a way. They announced this Galactic Alliance thing, whatever that was. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it was just a bunch of nothing. So, I don't know. So, let me circle back, to, the other two, the AF1, the NAL. Beaumont, they said, hey, we're going to go somewhere else. Said the AF1 was the next best destination. That's where they are. The Kentucky Barrels, they were announced. It's not Cincinnati itself. It's not Cincinnati itself, but it is in that area. Said Walker is going to lead the way over in that, team. He's going to lead the way. Pueblo, we already knew, the Pueblo Punishers, which, I didn't notice at first, but people pointed it out that their logo looks like the Punisher's logo from Marvel, which it's absolutely insane, And then our old friends, the Dallas Bulls. Oh God, here we go. They're gonna join the NAL too. They got a new reworked logo and everything like that. The goal, I believe, is to play in Fair Park, which is not a place you want to be, to be quite honest with you. Not a place you want to be, But, people tell me, well, Fair Park is better than that. And I keep telling people, no, it's not. It's not. But, yeah, if the Dallas Bulls play, I keep saying the Dallas Falcons, look, the things are getting weird, but it is what it is. So if the Dallas Bulls play in 2026, great. I will try my best to go to a game. If not, then it is what it is. And then it's my FL coaching news real quick. Ron James, somehow after the terrible season that Northern Arizona had, he's staying. Dave Moggensen, he's gone. So, he's gone from Iowa, and thank goodness for that, because Iowa was certainly the team of all time in 2025. One of the worst teams I think I've ever seen put out a product on the field, but yeah. And that's basically it, to be quite honest with you. I don't think I have anything else really to say that hasn't already been said. Duluth repeats as the TAL champions, beating the new team, the Hot Springs Wise Guys, in the TAL championship, Arena Mania 2. And then, of course, last night, Vegas won against Green Bay with a goal line stand, which, it is what it is. So, yeah. So let me kind of wrap things up here. This season has been a little bit different for me. As you all know, most Saturdays I have not been able to really watch as much indoor and arena ball as I would have liked to. One was the IFL Network. I was not going to pay $9.99 for the IFL Network. Was just not going to do that. And then, the playoffs were a separate subscription, tier, and I was not going to pay for that either. So the TAL, the AF1, the NAL all stepped up by, having their streams basically for free, or, Vice TV, which is pretty easy, to find, but, IFL had Victory Plus and stuff like that. And yeah, IFL's continuing to shop around for a national type deal and everything like that. But, ultimately, at the end of the day, the health of the sport is determined by you guys and by myself. It's determined by all of us. And we have a pretty tight-knit community. And, I've been, less of a reactionary, crazy reactionary type guy. Just, been more moving along with things, just kind of reacting in a calmer manner as things go, because it's at the end of the day, this is just, football. It's just football. No reason to get super stressed over it, And other people have stepped up in, my absence, because there have been a few weeks where I've just been like, I can't really make a video this week. I can't, there's a reason. I was like, you know what? I just can't justify making 3 videos in a row, talking about, like 2 or 3 games to playoffs. Just can't do that. So other guys have been stepping up, and you see it. I mentioned Off the Wall so many times. He's been great this year. First interview of the year. He's been killing it. The fact that he got both Tim Brown and Todd Tryon over the past like 3 weeks, he's been killing it out here. My boy Shady Sports. The whole crew that does the Around the Indoor World show that. I don't always have the time to watch the whole thing, because, it's live stream, and, sometimes they go like 2-3 hours. It's just like, I don't have time for 2 to 3 hours, anymore like that on a Saturday morning. So they've been keeping it up. They've been, got some great rappers with some guys, and just have great chemistry. There's other guys, which I'm already hinting at one of the interviews I'm going to do for this upcoming season for 2026. So this week in Arena Ball, as Goldberg would say, you had the Barbell Awards and everything like that, which is cool and all. I even had to throw my name in the ring, but it's all right. I had to throw my name in the ring, but you're next. Say you're next. As Goldberg would say. Wookie Drives, he's been on it too with the Twitter game. Trader Truth, another guy. I forgot what kind of super fan he is, but his Twitter is absolutely hilarious, talking about the IFL schedule. Centel, Arena Football Centel, which I know who the guys are. I'm not going to tell you who, but I know who the guys are. AF1 Anonymous, the Billings account guy. So many different Twitters and everything like that, and IGs, Arena Football Coverage, of course. I really want to mention about an IG. So many guys have pulled their weight, in the absence of guys like myself, because, this year, I haven't really done as much like, let me investigate this. Let me look into this. Because that's what I would be doing. That's what I've been doing, for most of the last 4 years is investigating a lot of the stuff myself, and finding out stuff that way, and usually finding stuff, maybe like 10% of the time before somebody else does. Somebody else will take credit for the other 90%. But this year, maybe that's maybe a less than 1% for me personally of me looking for things, less than 1% because other people, look for it first. And I want to thank everybody that did come onto the channel for interviews this year. We're talking Steve Walters, GM of the Duluth Harbor Monsters. I see you the other day. I see you, get that that Duluth distinction, like Duluth Harbor Monsters Day or whatever it was called. I see y'all get that publicity with the mayor of Duluth. Leonard Holmes, I have your number, big dog. I know the Georgia Indians didn't do, they didn't win the AAL2 this year, but it's all right. Project Superfan, the Gold Driller, glad that you were on the channel, my boy. You did amazing. You continue to do great work when you can, because I know you're a busy guy too. Kyle Jarvis, Mr. Jarvo, played for Salina, and I believe he may have played for somebody else this year, but I don't remember off the top of my head, And then Cody Baker, the GTIFL. GTIFL is coming back for a season 3, so just FYI, they're coming back for season 3. I mean, thanks to everybody that came onto the channel this year. It has been amazing. Things didn't really, get as crazy as last year as far as like view counts for these interviews, but I'm still happy to be able to do them. It's all the other guys that I haven't mentioned, that have been doing great things on. I'm usually mostly on Twitter, IG. That's basically the two I'm on. I don't have Reddit anymore. I think Reddit is useless to me. Facebook is useless to me. TikTok is not for me. So like, those are really the only two places that you'll find me. And of course, Discord, of course, And yeah, I'm just grateful for another season of, talking about this great sport. It's all over. You can look forward to 2026 sometime in March. We'll get the ball rolling again. I will have another update maybe sometime in October, but that's neither confirmed yet or anything like that. But I think I'll lock down the date for October. So it'll be late October. So I'm gonna lock it down for late October, and then we'll keep the ball rolling from there as we prepare for 2026. The off-season movement. Of course I was wrong. I said maybe like 5 teams. We're probably going to get way more than that. All of them probably aren't going to play, but we're definitely getting more than 5 teams, across most of the leagues. I don't know why I said 5. I just was throwing up a number. But with all that being said, gamers, my legion, 395 of you that are somehow there are 395 of you that want to watch my content. I don't know why. But I'm going to get on up out of here and enjoy the rest of my Sunday. We got Big 3 and WNBA to talk about tomorrow. And then, college football, the wild week 0 that ended in absolute stupidity. We'll talk about that on Tuesday. So, yeah, I'm out. Y'all take care. Have a good Sunday. Got the Big 3 championship today. Got some volleyball today. So, I'm looking pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good.